Alrighty, so this is going to be our first video for modeling, right? So that first video is kind of our introduction to my video. This one will keep shorter. Usually I'm probably going to give you guys about 20-minute videos. Sometimes it might be a half hour, depends on kind of the topic or subject. Remember, the cool thing about this is you're really following along in a project-based environment. So it's really easy to kind of pause, rewind a little bit if you need to watch the stuff. But I'll usually try to keep them at 20 minutes or under and stuff like that. So what we want to do here is really just get a super simple start on the end table, right? Just as kind of a first set of videos for our first day, right? The first thing we really have to talk about is the creating projects, as well as what we're going to be making. What we're going to be making as a starting point is a simple end tables. It's going to be our first model. It's kind of a good one to cut our teeth on and learn some basic tools. So I'll show you what kind of end table I'm looking for in a minute here in the video. But one of the first things we really want to do is create projects, right? Now technically Maya doesn't need to create projects for you to be able to save a Maya scene, right? A project is not a Maya scene. A project is really just a collection of folders that allow you to organize stuff better. Particularly if you have a scene with like tons of models in it, lots of textures and reference images all plugged in, and you have to like say move your project to a different computer, right? What can happen is that that's on a new computer with different directory addresses, right? And so what happens is Maya doesn't know where to find other models that might be referenced in, or textures or reference images, right? Because textures and reference images are images, they're pictures, they're separate files that Maya loads in, right? And so Maya won't know where to look for those, and so you have to reconnect them if you don't use projects. So while you don't necessarily absolutely need to use projects, they're good organizationally, and they come with some cool benefits if you have to move around to lots of different computers. So let's actually create a project as our first start off thing. So we go to File, right, in the File menu here. And what we can do is we can go to Project Window, right? It's way down here towards the bottom, File, Project Window. There we go. And what you'll see is by default, it kind of brings up this right here, right? Now these are the folders it's going to create. So it's going to create a scenes folder, it's going to create an images folder, it's going to create a render data folder, autosaves, right? If you've got autosave on, it's going to create that. But in this case, we haven't named it, and we haven't told it where to save yet. So what we do is we go to Current Project, New, right? And what we want to do is we want to give this a naming convention. Now, our class is going to be DAA, intro, right? And we can just call it intro 3D modeling, right? Keep it a little bit less wordy. Underscore, right? Now, in this case, for you guys, it's going to be summer, right? So we're just going to go summer 20. I'm probably going to use these videos for later classes, though. So in later semesters, remember, put your semester in here. Don't verbatim put in summer 20 if you're fall 20 or spring 21, right? DA intro 3D modeling, right? We'll actually even put in a little 240, right? So 240, and in this case we're A, right? And then we'll do underscore again, and what we're going to do is we're going to put our name in, right? So mine is Mike Roberts. And you'll notice we're using underscores. That's always kind of good instead of using spaces, particularly what we do, to use underscores, right? You'll see that's pretty common naming convention. And I'll just do one more underscore because this is going to be project 1, right? Now we're actually going to put 2 models in this project. So you can have multiple scenes in a project, right? This is just project 1. This is going to cover our first 2 models, an end table and a bed. So this is going to basically be the naming convention you want to use, right? Now, naming conventions are not arbitrary, but they're going to be different for different studios, different projects, right? So this is more just getting you guys practice with a naming convention, following along with this. This is actually part of your grade for your project. It's not a huge part of it, but a small part of it. So that way we can get you guys building the habit. So you do want to follow naming conventions. And you see this one's fairly descriptive. It's DA Intro to 3D Modeling, 240A, underscore summer 20, underscore, you'll put your name, I put my name, Mike Roberts, underscore project 1. Now in this case also we want to go to a location, so we click on this folder, and this will allow us to set a location. In this case I'm just going to put this on desktop. Select, there we go, hit accept. That project has now been created. In fact, if I minimize momentarily, you'll see that there's now a project folder right here on the desktop, right? And you see that there's all those files in there, right? So in fact, since we've already got this open for where we saved it at, right? I'm going to go to the source images folder, right? what we can do is we can actually download a reference picture right into this folder. So you'll notice kind of momentarily ago, you'll see I kind of already had a Chrome up. Doesn't matter which search engine, right? I put an endtable, right? Images. And what we're going to do is we're going to create an endtable. Now, you might look at these endtables and go, man, those are going to be super easy and super simple. And in terms of kind of the main legs and tops, that's fine. That's what we want. I want a drawer though, right? So that's not going to work. That's not going to work, right? Something like these right here will work, right? They have end tables, or they have drawers. I want you guys to have a drawer for yours, right? So it doesn't have to be exactly mine, but it should have a drawer, should have legs, right, at top. So this one will be good. I'll just right-click, save image as. Keep in mind that you always have to be a little bit careful when downloading this stuff. If it's got watermarks, in this case, since it's just we're using it as reference image, be okay. But keep in mind that usually, particularly if you're doing somebody's concept, right, like somebody's actual design, you really want to make sure to give them credit, right, because they have copyright to that, right? This stuff is usually just kind of generic, kind of real furniture that's put on there. So we should be reasonably safe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to desktop, because that's where I created the folder, right? Now I'm going to open that up, and then you'll see these are all the scenes it created in there, all the folders. And you see there's a source image area, and I'm going to call this endtable. There we go. And now we can close that up, and you'll see there's an endtable in the project folder. So we saved it into the project folder. You can always copy and paste it, like if you saved it to desktop accidentally, you can always just find it, copy and paste it into your project source images folder, right? But we have a project created now, and we'll bring mine back up. And what we can do is we can now go File, Set Projects. The project window allows us to create a project, give it a name, following the naming convention, and we're going to do this on all our projects, so you're going to get plenty more practice with me in lectures this term. But in this case, we want to set the project, right? You've only created a project. You haven't made it the active project, the project you're using in Maya. So right below Project Window in the File menu is Set Project, all right? And we can see there it is. So we don't open it, right? You see how I just selected it. I don't open it, right? You want to select on the project itself, Project 1. We'll hit Set. That is now the active project for us, right? So now what we want to do is we want to get that reference image loaded in here, right? Also, we want to make sure our units are set to a better scale. Right now, these units are set to centimeters, right? So if we build this at a couple of grid spaces large, it's going to be really small. So what we need to do is we need to go to Windows. In the Windows menu, you'll see there's an area called Settings, Preferences. And we'll talk about more of these later on as we go along, but preferences will be fine for now. So Windows, Settings, Preferences, Preferences. And this brings up this menu, right? Now, you can turn things off and on for the main interface. You can go to User Interface Elements and turn off things like the toolbox we saw in the display earlier. Display has some options here. If you go to Manipulators, you can adjust their size and modify them in a few other ways if you want to, right? You'll see Files and Projects right here. In the Files and Project area is your Autosave. You can enable Autosave. And what it'll do is it'll save it automatically into the set project. So if you have actually created a project, you set it, the autosaves will go into that autosave folder. It'll save every 10 minutes by default, although you see how you can tell that to be different. You can have it limit the number of autosaves, right, if you want to. And you can have it prompt before saving. This will basically cover you in case you forget to save often, right? I don't really use autosaves that much because I just have been in the habit of saving multiple versions and saving often anyways. But pretty much all software has autosaves. So you can enable autosave in Maya through Files and Projects, enable autosave. In this case, I'll keep it off. Undos are down here, so if you go to undo, you can kind of control how many undos you have, right? Modeling has kind of some extra options if you want them right here. Most of this stuff by default's fine, but we really wanted to go to settings right here, the settings one, right? Not only can you tell this to have a different up axis if you want to, 3D Studio Max and Blender by default use Z up axis, Pixar does as well. A lot of places don't. A lot of software actually has default Y up axis. Why does that matter? It only matters for the studio you're in, right? There's no real right or wrong. They're just the up axis, right? So it just depends on if your studio uses Z up axis, turn the Z up axis on. If they use Y, turn Y on. Doesn't really matter. You will see that there is working units, right? And you'll see there's a time area, 24 FPS, that's frames per second, right? A teacher a long time ago said they don't know what frames per second is, and I'm like, I think a lot of them actually do, considering particularly if they play video games, FPS for frames per second. Of course, it also stands for first-person shooter. But in terms of what we're talking about, it's frames per second, FPS. That's really for animation. What we wanted to do is go to linear, which says centimeter. Now, there's nothing wrong with working with centimeters. You just have to make your objects a lot bigger. You'd have to go to display grid, turn up the grid units. For us to keep it a little easier, we're just going to, and to get us practice with this and knowing how to do it, we're going to switch our linear units to meters, right? So that each grid unit's a meter, right? There's no real right or wrong in that case, though. But just so that you guys have practice knowing where to change this, I like using meters. So we'll hit save. That also gave me the option to talk to you guys about a few of these things in here, right? So we'll hit save. Here we go. And now you can see each grid unit's an actual meter, right? And the grid is a lot bigger. You want to work to scale, right? The rest of your team is going to be working to scale, and if you keep giving them really, really small stuff, they're going to be annoyed with you, right? So remember, Windows, Settings, Preferences, brings this up, Settings. Make sure you're working in the same units and the same up axis the rest of your team is, right? And of course, Files and Projects has Autosave if you want to turn that on. All right. So now what we want to do is we want to load our reference image in. So we're going to go to the Create menu, right? Create menu. And you'll see about halfway down is something called Free Image Plane. Free Image Plane. So I'm going to click on that, and what it does is it drops in this small little grid. Now you notice I'm holding down Alt, right? Alt on our keyboard, right mouse button to zoom in, right? Alt middle mouse button will move. If you do not have a three button mouse, right? Like say you only have a laptop with a touchpad, for the love of all the things that are good, spend the money to get a three button mouse. Your life will be so much better, right? In particular, if you've got a nice laptop but you don't have a mouse, get a mouse. Pretty much all of them by default nowadays are 2 and a scroll wheel, which is a 3-button mouse. You should have a 3-button mouse. If you try to do this with a touchpad on a laptop, it is going to suck, right? It is not going to be a fun experience. Get a mouse, right? Doesn't have to be an expensive one. Get a mouse, right? So remember, Alt left, Alt middle, Alt right will allow you to rotate, move, and zoom in. Now right now, this is actually pretty small. There's also not a picture on it. You also see it's green. That indicates that it's selected, right? So if I left click off, just left mouse button, right? When I say left click, I mean left mouse button. You'll notice that this becomes kind of a purple, right? A magenta, right? So if you left click on it, it selects it, right? Now usually you have to select on the edge though to select it. But when it's green, it means it is selected, right? So we of course can actually use our manipulators on this. W for move, E for rotate, R for scale, right? W, E, R. And you'll see that when we hit that W, E, and R, we see these manipulator handles, right? Now, the red is for the x-axis, right? Because we're dealing with Cartesian space, right? That means that we want, if we want to move stuff this way, it's on the x-axis. If we want to move them up, it's on the y-axis. If we want to move them this direction, it's on the z-axis. You might remember these axes coordinates from, say, math classes, right? Geometry and trigonometry classes. It is the same thing. This is the Cartesian space. In fact, that center of the world that this created it on is your origin. That is your 0, 0, 0. That is 1 for the x, that is 2 for the x, that is 3. That is -1, -2, -3 for the x. This is the Cartesian coordinate system that you would expect in a geometry and trigonometry class, right? So, basically, just keep that in mind, right? We're going to keep talking about it more. You'll notice that we can move our cursor over these handles to highlight them, right? So I can left-click drag, right? Hold down my left mouse button and drag, and you see how it moves just along the x-axis. Control-Z to undo, right? I can grab the green one and move it up or down. Control-Z to undo. I can grab the blue one and move it up or down, forward or backward, right? You'll see there's even these guys which allow you to move it along 2 axes. And there's even the center one, which is view move, which moves it relative, kind of parallel to the camera. So kind of neat, right? E for rotate has similar controls, right? That's view rotate, and the center one is actually trackball. And then of course we can hit R for scale, And you see that this has kind of very similar handles to the move tool, right? And that center one scales everything up. So this will be good. Even without a picture, we can scale this up because your end table is probably going to be a couple feet tall. So maybe not quite a meter, but close to. So it should be roughly about the size of a grid unit, roughly, right? I also don't like it to be on the 0 of the world. So I'll hit W, right, for move, and I'll just move this back. See how I'm grabbing the blue arrow, but I'm moving it back, the opposite direction the arrow points in, right? So it's not on the 0. We want our model to be on the 0 of the world, the origin of the world. Remember, W is move, E is rotate, R is scale, but the R right here as well, right? So you have those buttons right there to adjust them. So the nice thing about these image planes is you can create, right, as many as you want, and you can move, rotate, and scale them to whatever axis. And that's why they're honestly much better than adding image planes to the viewports, right? You only have the amount of viewports you have, and they're stuck to those viewports. Here you can make 20 of these, and you can rotate them to the weirdest angles super easy. So free image planes are a great way to load reference images in. Now in this case, it's just a green square with a green X in it, right? That we've moved and scaled to make it bigger and get it into a better position. Now we're going to go over to the right side here, right? Because remember, we talked about this in the intro video. There's modeling toolkit, there's channel box layer editor, right here. There's attribute editor. And there are also these little tabs right here on the very right side. Now attribute editor is the one we want. Control A is actually the quick key for that, right? So if I'm in modeling toolkit and then I hit Control A, that'll automatically bring that up. But there are these little tabs on the side here. Now when we bring up attribute editor, you'll notice two little tabs up here. Image plane, which is really for certain options for this, and image plane shape. By default, usually when you go to attribute editor on an image plane, it brings image plane shape 1 up. And you'll notice that there is an area called image name with a white folder. If we click on that white folder, you'll notice this goes right to source images for project 1 because that's the project we set. I can select endtable, and now there's our endtable. Now in this case, you see how it actually made it smaller. So R for scale, right? And we just scale this kind of back up to kind of get it roughly the size we want it to be. Roughly something that would be, you know, kind of a couple feet tall. You know, remember a meter is 3 feet. So it doesn't have to be quite a meter, but probably not far off from a meter in terms of size. So there we go. But that's how you create and load an image plane in, right? So create free image plane. It'll load this in as a green square with a green X in it. And then W, E, or R for move, rotate, and scale to change its position or size. And of course, if you go to attribute editor on the side here, right, and you click on that little folder, that white folder in image plane shape 1, it'll allow you to browse or go right to source images. Now, you'll notice I saved this image into, or at least moved it into the project. That is important. Everything that you do for this project, models, scenes, right, reference pictures, because that's all we're really doing, should be in the project, right? Otherwise, you're defeating the whole purpose of using a project, right? If they're scattered all over your computer, then they're not easy to move. When you set a project, it won't necessarily find and load them in properly, whereas when you set a project and they're in the right folders, it'll know where to look for them, right? All right, and we'll keep talking about that as we go along. So there we go, that's in there. Switch back to modeling toolkit. And in this case, I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to do a quick Save Scene As. Usually you can just do Save Scene, but when I first do it, I like to do Save Scene As. So we go File, Save Scene As. And you notice how it goes to Project 1 Scenes, because remember, we actually created a project for Project Window, and we set a project, right? Setting project makes it the active project. So now when I go to Save Scene As, it goes right to the Scenes folder of Project 1. And what we're going to do is we're going to use that same naming convention for our file as we did our project. So Intro to 3D Modeling, 240A, underscore summer, right, 20, underscore your name, underscore project 1. In this case, we're going to do underscore end table, right? Because this is going to be for project 1, but it's also going to be a specific end table project, right? So it's specifically not just project 1, it's going to be the end table for project 1. Remember, there's going to be 2 models for project 1, an end table and a bed. Now, the other thing I want to point out briefly here before I just show you how to create a couple of primitives. We're not even going to build everything yet, just kind of drop them in. You'll notice that there are file types, right? So I can click on this and there's two options, Maya binary and Maya ASCII. Now Maya binary is default. That's usually going to be totally fine for you. So I want to talk to you guys about this, but the default Maya binary should be fine for you guys. But there is the Maya ASCII option. So what's the difference? Well, in terms of all of the important data being there, they're both there, all of it's there, they're both stable. Maya binary is a smaller file size. The reason for that is if you use Maya ASCII, technically it's a bigger file size because it's actually carrying the information to be able to, let's say, reprogram the scene file if you need to, hack it if you will. If you save as Maya ASCII, what you can do is you can actually open up that Maya file in Word or even WordPad, right? And what it'll do is it'll show you all the code for everything in that scene. So you can actually go in there and change some of that code if you need to. Now, I'm sure the vast majority of you are not even close to comfortable with coding or coding anything in Maya. So at this stage in an intro to 3D, you're really probably not going to do Maya ASCII. But Maya ASCII does give you the option to basically hack the file if you need to. You can actually open it in a word editing package and see the code and change the code if you need to. Maya binary won't give you that option. And because of that, its file size is smaller because it doesn't have to carry that extra editable information. So Maya binary is the default. The file sizes will be smaller. Maya ASCII file sizes will be bigger. But Maya ASCII does give you the extra option of being able to basically change the code in the file if you need to. You can actually open a Maya file in a Word document as well as in Maya. That's the big difference between Maya binary and Maya ASCII. Maya binary is going to be fine for us, so I'm going to hit Save As. Continue. There we go. And now you'll see it's saved as a Maya scene. Now you notice the Maya scene itself is not the project, right? The project's really just a collection of folders to put stuff in, right? This is now actually a Maya scene that actually carries all this stuff that's going to be in a scene. Now, quickly before we stop, as this video is probably going to go a little longer too because there's just some really simple stuff to get out of the way, but I've got to explain it a lot too, right? I'm just going to create kind of the quick main cubes here. We're not going to make the drawer yet. We're not going to bevel. That'll be our next video for Thursday. We'll start to get into that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Create menu, and I'm going to go to Polygon Primitives Cube, right? Create Polygon Primitives Cube. And what that's going to do is it's going to drop in a Polygon cube, right? Now it's quite large, so we have to adjust it momentarily here. You'll also notice that if I hit 4 in the view on my keyboard, it turns wireframe on, right? It's that button right there. If I hit 5, which is the next button, see how it's kind of those buttons right there? 4 is wireframe, which just shows you the edges. 5 shows it shaded, so it looks filled in. Now, you have your selection types right here. Object, vertex, edge, face. If I was to hold down the right mouse button though, so if you hold down your right mouse button, you'll notice you have vertex, edge, face, object mode right here. This is the preferred way to do it. So I can go to face and I can grab polygons, right? I can hold down the right mouse button and go to vertex, and vertices are points, right? Points in space. And if I hold down the right mouse button, I can go to edge, and then an edge is the line between vertices, right? So just a quick rundown of that. And you notice that when I'm in vertex, edge, or face mode, it's blue, right? Whereas if I hold down right mouse button, right, I can go to object mode. So you have vertex, edge, face, and object mode all right here, just like there. The teachers at Cogswell prefer right mouse button. I do too. Professionals do. So if you hold down right mouse button, it brings up what's called a marking menu, and you have these selection types right here. So we want to be in object mode because we're really just working with objects right now. We're going to start to get into the nitty-gritty of working with edges and faces on the next video. Now, you'll notice I can click off the object and then left-click back on it, right? So if you don't see any color on the object, it's not selected. If you click on it, it should show up as green edges. Now I can hit R for scale, right? Remember it's right here. And I can grab that green handle, right? Left-click drag on that green handle to scale this down. You see how it's much thinner now? Now we can always grab that center one, right? That light blue one in the center scales everything at the same time. And that looks like that's pretty close to the size I wanted. Now I'm going to hit W for move, and I can grab this green arrow and I can move this up. We now have the top. We're not even going to put bevels on this yet. We're going to talk about that in the next video. So now what I want to do is I want to create this second drawer right here, right, the main drawer. So I'm going to go to Create Polygon Primitives, right, Cube again, right. Now we do have these options boxes. We'll get into that a little bit later on as we go along. But if I did go to cube options box, you'll notice I can pick an axis, which for cubes doesn't matter that much. I can adjust and make the width, height, depth different sizes, and I can even give more edge loops. The default for now is going to be fine though. But anytime you see those little check boxes, right? Those are the options for it. I can create a cube without going to the options, but if I want the options, I can bring that up. Now in this case, I'm going to hit R for scale again. I'm going to grab that center light blue one, left click drag. I want to make it smaller than that one. It'll should be a lot less tall, so I'll left click grab that green. There we go. Now, on this first video, we're not going to get into snapping tools yet. I am going to show you guys how to do more precision snapping with snap vertex later on and snap to grid. This first project is about getting used to major modeling. So in this case, I'm just going to eyeball the alignment, right? Which usually actually, for a lot of modeling, works great. We will go into snapping tools in later projects though. Only so much we can go over in one video, right? So W for move, and I can grab that green arrow, right? Sometimes you'll see it's yellow because it's the last selected one. So I'll left click drag on that green arrow, kind of move it up. It's right about there. Maybe scale it down a little more. R for scale, grab that green handle there. W for move, grab that green handle, right? So you just left click drag on those to move them. Now in this case, you'll notice I'm making sure to keep these so that they're not being moved or scaled on the, unless uniformly, on the red and the blue, because we want them to stay square, and we want them to stay kind of perfectly lined up on the zero of the world, right? You're going to be a lot happier if you work from the zero and keep your models on the zero. Symmetry works better there, at least for the world symmetry features. Mirroring works better there. Now I'm going to create the legs really quick. Actually, I'm going to create this lower part too really quick. So I'm just going to go to Edit, Duplicate, Control D is the quick key for it. That way I can just copy that cube, move it down, because these are probably about the same size and just different height. R for scale. Remember, W is for move, right? So W, and I can move down on the green arrow. There we go. But remember, you can duplicate objects, right? Edit, duplicate. Now in this case, I'm going to create one of the table legs. So I'm going to go to Create, Polygon Primitives Cube. I'm going to hit R for scale, scale it in a lot, kind of on the that center one, right? That very center. Remember, R for scale. Now in this case, I'm going to hit W, and I am actually going to move these out, right? The center ones we want to keep zero on the zero, right? We don't really want to move them off in any of these directions. But the leg, there's 4 of them, and they are asymmetrical, right? They're not the same. So I can just kind of grab these different handles, move them around. R for scale again. I can grab that green one to scale it to give it good length. W for move, and I can move down on the green. What I could do is I could slowly get this kind of lined up to where I want it to be. Size-wise, position-wise, that looks like that's pretty good. There we go. Move it over a little bit more this way. There we go. So we've got a pretty good kind of line up there. There we go. I'm going to hit Control S really quick to save the scene so I don't lose this. And what I want to do is I want to mirror this, right? And because we're working on the zero, the mirror is going to work really well with this. So what we can do is we can go to Mesh, right? And we can go to Mirror, and we're going to go to the Options box for the mirror, right? Now, cut geometry is usually on by default, and I'm not the biggest fan of it. I don't think it usually works that well, and you don't really need it a lot of the time. So I usually just have it off and check it. Now in this case, I want to mirror this direction, right? Because I want a leg on this side. That's the x-axis, right? So we pick x-axis. We want world, so it's using the world coordinates, and we want it to be offset from the zero of the world, which is here. And combined with the original also works pretty well because then it makes them one object. But technically that can be turned off. So we'll mirror, and there we go. Now I can hit Q, right? That goes back to our regular selection tool, and I can click back on these, and you see how they're one object. And we'll go over why they're one object even though they're technically not touching, but we'll do that in a later video. I want to mirror this again to the other side. So we go to Mesh, Mirror, Options box, make sure Cut Geometry is unchecked. Everything else you should be able to leave default, world, zero, combined should be fine. But I want the mirror axis to be the Z this time, right? Because I want it to go this direction. So we'll hit Mirror, and there we go. Remember, Q is your quick key for your regular selection tool. And now we can see we've got the basic block in for this. We're not doing the drawer yet. We're not doing the beveling. We're going to see this. I'm going to go through this all step by step with you, right? But really we just wanted to create some Polygon primitive cubes, right? At some point I did duplicate one of them, right, this guy. And we can use our move, rotate, and scale tools and grab the different handles, right, to scale these. And then we even did a little bit with our mesh mirror options box. And that will give us our end table. And that's a good start for that.